G'day everyone, what's happening? Anthony here, and we're here for Trader Talk number 3. So let's get into it. This week's topic is trading the news. So I thought an interesting thing coming up, we had ISM last night, which came out, pretty big move in the bonds. So I thought perfect opportunity to talk about how I go about trading the news and the little tips and things that I can share with you guys to help you guys better be able to trade the news. So first and foremost, a lot of people always ask, do I hold into news? And part of that is, especially with my currency trading, that sort of depends on where the trade is. So you have to think of news as it's definitely a quick way for your trade to hit its target, but it's also a quick way for your trade to stop out. So what I like to do is, if we've got a trade which is quite close to our entry price, for example, I'll just let that play out. But if it's close to the profit target, I might look to close it down if it's very close, because the risk is that it might just spike against you and the liquidity might not fill your exit order. And then of course, if it's near stop, that's another one where, depending on how much size you've got on the trade, if it is near your stop and the market does move aggressively, you can end up losing a bit more than what you originally set out to lose, and that's not exactly ideal. So one of the main things I like to do when I'm holding a trade into news is just look at where my risk reward is for that trade. You know, what's the worst case scenario that can happen out of this particular situation? You know, for example, last night, if you were to have the trade on the bonds and, you know, the ISM came out below 50, which means a contraction, and you know, it had quite a large move. You know, if you were in a trade that you were near a stop and, you know, maybe you weren't quick on it when it came out, and, you know, even if you have orders in the market to get out, doesn't always necessarily mean they can get filled, because obviously there needs to be someone on the other side to be able to fill the order. So that's certainly an aspect of it that you've got to keep in mind when you are trading in and around news. And the second part is the different impact news has on different asset classes. So obviously a lot of the time people like to try to say their strategy is adapted to trading the news, when in reality it's majority of the news that is unforeseen that is really going to fuck you over anyway. So let me give you an example. The fixed income and currency markets are heavily impacted by the changes in interest rates. So with this, a lot of people are like, okay, if you have a change in the rates coming into, say for example, yesterday we knew that the RBA was cutting, well, there was an 80% chance that the RBA was cutting from 1% to 0.75% cash rate. And some people might say, oh yeah, it's already, like, they're cutting, I'm not going to trade it because it's already there. But the thing is, it's 80% priced in. So you've got to think about the times in the market where it's unforeseen. Like for example, if they wouldn't have cut yesterday, the move would have been crazy. Like we would have seen a complete spin. Like if they would have come out yesterday and been like, things have changed, things are improving, we're not going to look to cut for the rest of this year, would have been a fucking totally different ball game. And it's the unforeseen things that are really going to hit you the most. So especially if you're a currencies trader and you're like, oh, I don't want to trade around these interest rate announcements because, you know, it's expected to change. Well, what you're not factoring in is the fact that it's the potential, if you get an out of sort of character change, that's what's really going to move the currency, because people are going to be positioned on the wrong side. So there's going to have to be more that people need to do to put the right positions on for them and their portfolios. So that's something to definitely keep in mind. Just because there's a change or no change doesn't mean, like, that's just a forecast. You know, that's the same as what you and I might believe is happening. But in reality, it's the surprises that are going to have the biggest effect. And that's what I've seen in my time in the past. Like, you know, there's been times where non-farm payrolls at the end of the month has come in significantly. It's like they're predicting 200,000 and it comes in like 50,000, or they're predicting 50,000 and it comes in 250,000. And then back then that had impacts on whether they were going to hike or cut rates. So when you've got these sort of things happening, you can't predict that. You can only set yourself the guidelines around it. And I don't think it's necessarily wise thing to do, to be saying to yourself, I'm not going to trade news, I'm not going to trade tier one, blah blah blah. You need to know that, like, how your strategy fits into that. Like, for example, you know, I do some swing trading and some intraday FX trading, and for me, I would rather use the idea where if it's near my entry, I'll leave it. If it's near my stop, I will definitely assess it. If I have good risk reward on the other side, I still might take it. But you have to remember as well, one thing that we haven't touched on is the fact that with a lot of retail traders who are trading currencies around this high impact news, if it's near your stop, chances are it could go the direction you want to, but you get stopped out on the spread anyway. So that's another thing to keep in mind. That's also why you might want to close it out beforehand, depending on where it is and the risk reward. I mean, if you're going for something that's like a 3-to-1 trade, you could probably sit there and accept that you're going to possibly high chance get stopped out. But hey, if it does turn, you know, your upside's at least worthwhile taking on that risk. But if you're going for a 1-to-1 and it's, you know, quite near your stop, chances are you're probably going to get stopped out on that trade around news. So that's a bit of insight around how I sort of manage a position around the news, and hopefully you've got some insight from it. I would love to hear any feedback, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Have a good week.